After my husband passed away, I bought a brand new car to start fresh. The very next day, my son showed up and took my keys. "You don't need this," he told me, with a coldness I'd never seen before. "I'm heading out of town tomorrow with my wife's family, and I can drop you off at an assisted living facility on the way." I was paralyzed. My own son, the person I had brought into this world, had just told me I no longer had the right to live my own life. Then, as he drove off down the street in my new car, I sent him a text message. Just 3 words: "Check the glove box." What he saw in there made him stop immediately, slam on the brakes, and realize he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. But for you to understand why I did what I did, I need to tell you the whole story from the beginning. My name is Eleanor, but everyone calls me Ellie. I'm 65 years old. Until 3 months ago, I was married to the love of my life. 40 years together. 40 years of laughter, struggles, and building a family. My husband was a good man, a dedicated worker, the kind they just don't make anymore. When he died, I felt like the world stopped turning. Our house became a mausoleum of memories. Every corner reminded me of him. His coffee mug on the counter, his favorite easy chair, the scent of his cologne in the bathroom. I was left there, in the middle of that deafening silence, wondering what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. The first few days were the worst. I didn't want to get out of bed, I didn't want to eat, I didn't want to see anyone. But one morning, as I looked at a photo of us smiling on a beach full of life, I heard his voice in my head, almost as if he were standing right behind me. "Ellie," he always used to say, "as long as there's air in your lungs, there's a reason to keep moving forward. Don't just sit still waiting for life to pass you by. Go out there and live it." And he was right. He always was. So, I made a decision. I was going to start over. I wasn't going to stay locked up in that house living among ghosts and memories. I was going to honor his legacy by truly living. And for that, I needed mobility. I needed freedom. I needed a car. Throughout our married life, we always drove the same old gray sedan, a vehicle my husband kept running through sheer ingenuity and patience. But that car died with him. It broke down a week after the funeral, and the mechanic told me fixing it would cost more than replacing it. So, with the life insurance money and the savings we had set aside together, I decided to buy a new car. Nothing luxurious, nothing flashy, just something reliable, something that was mine. Something that represented this new chapter. I went to the dealership on a Tuesday morning. The salesman, a friendly young man named Devin Williams, showed me several models, and then I saw it. A sleek, silver sedan gleaming under the showroom lights. It was perfect. Compact, easy to drive, and packed with all the safety features I needed. I got in and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Devin patiently explained everything. The braking system, the airbags, the warranty. And when he told me the price, $8,500, $8,500, I knew I could handle it. The money was right there. It was mine. I'd earned it through years of hard work and sacrifice, every penny my husband and I had saved for a future he wouldn't see, but one I absolutely would. I signed the paperwork that very day. The car was registered only in my name, Eleanor Vance, sole owner. Driving away from the dealership in my new car, with that fresh upholstery smell and the smooth, gentle hum of the engine, I cried. I cried from both joy and sadness. Joy because I was taking a step forward, and sadness because my husband wasn't there to see it. But driving back home, with the afternoon sun streaming through the windshield, I knew he would be proud of me. I knew this was exactly what he would have wanted me to do. I got home and parked the car right in front of the driveway. I sat there for a moment, just looking at it. It was beautiful. It was mine. It was my fresh start. I took the keys inside and left them on the kitchen counter. Then I called my son Marcus to share the news. I wanted him to know his mother was okay, that I was being strong, and that I was honoring his father's memory in the best way possible. Marcus didn't pick up, so I left him a voicemail. "Honey, I bought a new car. I'm so excited. Come over when you can so you can see it. I love you." I hung up, feeling happy, expecting him to be thrilled for me, expecting him to understand how important this was. I had no idea that the next day my life would change forever. I didn't know my own son was about to betray me in the worst way imaginable. I woke up early the next morning. The sun was barely rising, and I was already in the kitchen brewing coffee. I had plans for the day. I wanted to hit the supermarket, then maybe stop by my friend Serena Jenkins' house to show her the car, and perhaps if I felt up to it, drive to the cemetery to visit my husband and tell him all about it. Yes, I know it sounds silly to talk to someone who isn't there, but it made me feel close to him. It made me feel less alone. I was finishing my second cup of coffee when I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window and saw Marcus's vehicle. My heart leaped with joy. He'd come. He'd gotten my message and rushed over to see me, to see my new car, to share this moment with me. I smiled and hurried to the door. But when I opened it, that smile froze on my face. Marcus wasn't alone. Standing next to him was his wife, Tiffany Price, and neither of them was smiling. There was something in their expressions, in the way they looked at me, that made me feel uneasy, as if I were a problem they needed to solve. "Hi, sweetie," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Tiffany, what a surprise to see you both so early. Come in, I just made coffee." Marcus didn't even acknowledge my greeting. He walked straight into the house, heading with determined steps toward the kitchen. Tiffany followed, giving me a glance I couldn't quite decipher. I closed the door and followed them, feeling the joy I had felt moments before turn into a strange knot in my stomach. Something was off. In the kitchen, Marcus stopped in front of the counter, looking at my new car keys. He picked them up, weighing them in his hands as if evaluating their mass. "Mom," he finally said, without meeting my eyes, "we need to talk." I crossed my arms, trying to ignore the alarm bells ringing in my head. "Sure, honey, what is it?" He exchanged a look with Tiffany. She nodded, giving him permission to continue. And then Marcus spoke. "Mom, I heard you bought a car. A new one." "I did," I replied, my voice sounding more excited than it should have. "That's why I called yesterday. I wanted you to come see it. It's beautiful, Marcus, and it makes me feel so free, so—" "You don't need it," he interrupted. His words dropped like stones into the middle of the kitchen. I stood silent, not understanding. "What?" I whispered. Marcus finally looked me in the eye. "You don't need a car, Mom. Not at your age. You don't drive as well as you used to. It's dangerous. Plus, it's an unnecessary expense, the maintenance, the insurance, the gas. What for?" I felt like he had slapped me. "Marcus, I drive perfectly fine. My license is current. I passed all the tests. And besides, it's my money, my decision." He shook his head as if speaking to a stubborn child. "Mom, that's not the point. The point is being practical. Look, Tiffany and I have been talking. We're taking a trip tomorrow with her parents, a family trip we've been planning for months, and our car is acting up. Yours is new. It's perfect for the drive." "Wait," I said, holding up a hand. "Are you telling me you came here to ask to borrow my car?" Marcus gave a short, humorless laugh. "I didn't come to ask for anything, Mom. I came to tell you I'm taking it." Before I could process what was happening, before I could react, he closed his hand around the keys. "No!" I screamed. "Marcus, those are my keys! That's my car!" But he was already walking toward the door. Tiffany followed him, completely ignoring me. "Marcus, stop! You can't do this! Give me my keys!" He paused at the threshold and turned to look at me. What I saw in his eyes broke my heart. There was no love there, no respect, only impatience and something that looked like contempt. "Mom, enough with the drama," he said in a voice so cold it didn't sound like my son's. "You don't need this car. You don't need any of this. You're living alone in this huge house, clinging to memories. It's not healthy." "What are you saying?" I whispered, my voice barely escaping my throat. "Tiffany and I have been talking," Marcus continued, "and we think it would be better for you to consider moving to a more appropriate place, an assisted living facility. There are some really good ones in the city. You'd be looked after, you'd have company, You wouldn't have to worry about anything. And when we get back from the trip, we can go look at a few. In fact, I can drop you off at one on the way." The world stopped. My son's words echoed in my ears, but I couldn't believe them. An assisted living facility. He was telling me to leave my home, my memories, my life, to become a burden others had to care for. "Marcus," I said, my voice trembling, "I don't need a facility. I'm perfectly fine here. This is my house." He sighed as if my resistance was just another inconvenience. "Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be. We're taking the car. We'll be gone for a week. When we get back, we'll talk calmly about your situation." And with that, he walked out of the house. Tiffany followed without saying a single word. I ran after them. "Marcus, no, please. That car is mine. I bought it with my own money. You can't just take it." But he was already opening the door to my new car, my silver car, my symbol of freedom. "Marcus, I'm begging you," I shouted, tears starting to stream down my cheeks. "Don't do this to me. I'm your mother." He paused for 1 second. For 1 second, I thought he was going to come to his senses, that he would remember who I was, that he would remember everything I had done for him. But then he got in the car, started the engine, and drove away. He just left, with Tiffany in the passenger seat, with my keys, with my car, with my dignity. I stood in the middle of the driveway watching the silver car disappear down the street. The tears were falling freely now. My body was shaking. I couldn't believe what had just happened. My own son had robbed me, humiliated me, and told me I was useless. I stumbled back into the house, closed the door, and sank onto the sofa. And there, in the silent living room full of memories of a life that no longer existed, I cried. I cried for the car. I cried for the betrayal. But most of all, I cried for the son I had just lost. I don't know how long I sat on that sofa crying. Maybe it was minutes, maybe hours. Time ceased to have meaning. All I felt was a deep ache in my chest, as if something inside me had shattered, and perhaps it had. The image I had of my son, the trust, the unconditional love a mother always holds for her children, no matter what. But then, in the middle of that emotional darkness, something shifted. I stopped crying. I wiped the tears with the back of my hand and felt something different growing in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't despair. It was fury, a cold, calculating rage that began to replace the pain. Because as I sat there, I remembered something important, something Marcus didn't know, something that was about to change everything. I wasn't a foolish old woman. I had lived 65 years. I had raised a son practically alone while my husband worked 16-hour shifts. I had managed a home, a budget, an entire life. And over all those years, I learned a fundamental lesson. You always have to be prepared for the worst. You always need a backup plan. When I bought that car, I didn't just sign the papers and happily drive home. No, I had been careful. I had been smart. Because even though I wanted to believe my son was a good man, even though I wanted to think he would never hurt me, I had seen signs. Small signals that I had ignored because it was easier not to see them. The way Tiffany looked at my house, assessing its value. The way Marcus asked about his father's life insurance, about my savings, about my plans. Casual comments that, in retrospect, didn't seem so casual anymore. So after buying the car, I did something else. Something that at the time seemed like an overreaction, almost paranoia, but which I now thanked God for. I visited Walter Pierce. Walter had been a friend of my husband's for 30 years. He was a good attorney. When I told him I had bought a new car and had certain concerns about my son, he didn't judge me. He didn't tell me I was being paranoid. He simply listened. "Ellie," he told me that day in his office, sitting behind his dark wood desk. "If you have doubts, it's better to be prepared. Prevention is not mistrust, it's intelligence." And then he helped me. He helped me prepare documents, legal documents that protected my interests, documents that made it clear who owned that car, documents that established clear consequences for anyone who tried to take what was mine. Walter prepared a notarized letter with his official seal and signature, carrying full legal weight. The letter explained everything: The car was registered solely in my name. Anyone who took it without my explicit, written permission would be committing a felony, grand theft auto, and that I, as the owner, had every right to file criminal charges. Furthermore, Walter attached certified copies of the car's title, the vehicle registration, and my current driver's license. All of it was proof that I was fully capable and legally entitled to own and operate that vehicle. But that wasn't all. Walter also prepared another document, one that hurt me to sign, but which I knew was necessary: an amendment to my will. In the original will, which I had made years ago with my husband, Marcus was the primary heir. The house, the savings, everything was to go to him when I died. But after seeing the signs, after feeling that discomfort in my stomach every time Tiffany asked about money, I decided to make a radical change. In the new will, I removed Marcus completely. Not as punishment, I explained to Walter, but as protection. If anything happened to me, I didn't want Tiffany and him to benefit from my death. I wanted my assets to go to charities, organizations that helped seniors, animal shelters, places that would truly do something good with that money. Walter included a copy of that new will in the document package. And finally, we prepared one more thing, a sworn declaration, signed by me and notarized by Walter, where I clearly stated that I was in full control of my mental faculties, that I was not being coerced or manipulated, and that any attempt to declare me incapable or force me into an assisted living facility against my will would be considered elder abuse and would be legally contested. Walter also attached the results of a recent medical exam that showed I was in perfect physical and mental health. I put that entire packet of documents, that legal arsenal, into a large manila envelope, and I placed that envelope in the glove box of my new car the day before Marcus came to steal it. At that moment, when I placed it there, part of me hoped I would never have to use it. Part of me prayed I was wrong about my son. But another part, the wiser part that had learned to be cautious, knew it was the right decision. Now, sitting on my sofa, my eyes swollen from crying, I remembered all of it, and a bitter smile appeared on my face. Marcus thought I was a foolish old woman. He thought he could just take what he wanted and that I wouldn't do anything. He thought I was weak, easily manipulated, that I had given up, but he was dead wrong. I got up from the sofa, went to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. I drank it slowly, feeling the cold rage turn into solid determination. I picked up my cell phone from the counter and looked at it for a long moment. I knew Marcus must be on the highway by now. They were probably headed to Tiffany's parents' house, which was in another state, a 3-hour drive away. They were probably laughing, celebrating how they had just gotten a free new car for their trip. Tiffany was probably telling Marcus how easy it had been, how pathetic his mother was. I opened the messaging app and found Marcus's contact. My fingers trembled slightly over the screen, not from fear, not from sadness, but from anticipation. I knew what I was about to do. I knew the effect it would have. And although the part of me that was still a mother felt pain for what was coming, the other part, the part that deserved respect and dignity, knew it was necessary. I typed 3 words, only 3 words, short, direct, but charged with a weight Marcus couldn't yet imagine. Check the glove box. That was it. I didn't add explanations. I didn't add threats. I didn't add emotion, just those 3 words. I hit send. The message went out. I saw it mark itself as delivered, then as read. I imagined Marcus on the highway driving my car, hearing his phone notification. I imagined him looking at the screen, perhaps with Tiffany asking who it was. I imagined him reading that short message and being confused. Check the glove box. What could his mother mean by that? I sat at the kitchen table with the phone in my hand, waiting. My heart was beating fast, but steady. There was no turning back. I had thrown the first stone, and soon, very soon, Marcus would realize he had completely underestimated his mother, that the woman who had given birth to him, who had raised him with love and sacrifice, was also a woman who knew how to defend herself, a woman who would not allow anyone, especially not her own son, to walk all over her. 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes, then my phone vibrated. It was Marcus. He was calling. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. He called again and again and again. 5 consecutive calls, all ignored. I wanted him to feel what I had felt, the powerlessness, the desperation, the slow and terrible realization that he had lost control of the situation. Finally, he stopped calling, and a text message arrived. "Mom? What is this? What does it mean? Call me, please." I didn't reply. Another message arrived. "Mom, this is a mistake. Can we talk, please?" I didn't reply to that one either. And then came the message I had been waiting for, the message that confirmed he had read everything, that he had seen the documents, that he finally understood the magnitude of what he had done. The message read, "Mom, please don't do this. It was a mistake. I'm sorry. We can fix this. Don't call the police, please." I read those words over and over. I could feel the panic in every letter, the desperation, the fear. And although a part of me, that maternal part that never fully dies, felt a pang of pain seeing my son like that, the other part, the one that had been betrayed and humiliated, felt satisfied. Now he knew. Now he understood that his actions had consequences. I let another 10 minutes pass before replying. I wanted him to sweat it out. I wanted every second of silence to remind him of what he had done. Finally, I wrote, "Return the car to my house. Now." His reply was immediate. "I'm 3 hours away. I'm turning around right now. I'll be there as soon as possible. I promise, Mom." I put the phone on the table and leaned back in my chair. A strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't joy. It couldn't be joy when it involved my own son, but it was something akin to justice, to vindication. I had spent my entire life being gentle, being understanding, being the perfect mother who always forgave everything. And look where that got me. Treated like an obstacle, like something disposable. I went to my room and looked in the mirror. I saw a 65-year-old woman with gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes, and hands that had worked hard all her life. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw someone who wasn't going to give up. My husband always told me I was stronger than I thought. I wish he could see me now. I wish he could see his wife defending herself. I think he'd be proud. I changed my clothes, putting on a deep green dress that my husband had given me years ago. I styled my hair and put on a little lipstick. If I was going to have this confrontation with my son, I was going to face it with dignity. I wasn't going to be the shattered woman he had left crying on the sofa. I was going to be the woman who had taken control of her own life. While I waited, I called Walter Pierce. I needed him to know what was happening. He answered on the second ring. "Ellie," he said, his voice calm and professional. "What can I do for you?" "It happened," I told him. "My son took the car, he found the documents, and he's heading back now." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard him sigh. "I'm sorry you were right, Ellie. Nobody wants to be right about something like this." "I know," I replied, "but now I need to know what's next." Walter patiently explained. Technically, Marcus had committed a felony, grand theft auto. Even though he was my son, being family didn't change the legal facts. I had every right to file a report, but I also had the right not to. The decision was entirely mine. The important thing was that Marcus now knew I had that power, that I had the tools to hold him accountable. "I want him to come and talk," I told Walter. "But I need you to be available by phone, just in case." "Of course," he replied. "I'll keep my phone handy. Call me for anything. And Ellie," he added before hanging up, "you are a brave woman. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." His words filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt all day. Thank you, Walter, not just for the legal help, but for believing in me. I hung up and checked the clock. Marcus had said he was 3 hours away. That meant he would arrive around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It was barely 2 o'clock. I had time. Time to prepare mentally. Time to decide exactly what I was going to say to him. Time to strengthen my resolve. I went to the kitchen and made tea. Not because I wanted tea, but because I needed something to do with my hands. I needed to stay busy. While the water boiled, I thought about all the times I had sacrificed something for Marcus, all the sleepless nights when he was a baby, all the times I put his needs before my own, the summers I worked 2 jobs so I could pay for the music lessons he wanted, the times I defended his bad decisions to others because he was my son, and that's what mothers do. And I thought about Tiffany, how she had entered our lives 5 years ago, how, from the start, there was something about her that made me uneasy. She wasn't openly cruel or rude, but there was a coldness in her eyes, a way of evaluating everything in terms of monetary value. I remembered the first time she came to my house, how she walked through the rooms as if she were appraising the property, how she asked what the house was worth, how much I had in my savings, if I had life insurance. My husband had noticed it too. One night, lying in bed, he told me, "Ellie, there's something about that girl I don't like. I think she's only with Marcus for the money." I defended my son. I said he was being paranoid, that he was just protective, but he was right. My husband was always a good judge of character, and I should have listened to him. After my husband died, Tiffany changed. She became bolder, more direct with her questions about money, more insistent that I should sell the house, move to something smaller, and invest the money. And Marcus, my own son, began to echo her words, as if they were a team, as if I were the project they had to solve together. The tea grew cold in my cup without my touching it. The hours passed slowly. Every time I heard a car drive by on the street, my body tensed up, but it wasn't him. Not yet. At 4:30, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Marcus. 20 minutes away. Please, Mom. I need to talk." I didn't reply. I just stood up, smoothed my dress, and prepared myself. At 4:50, I heard the familiar engine sound. My car, my silver car, pulling into the driveway. I looked out the window. Marcus was at the wheel. He looked pale, exhausted. Tiffany wasn't with him. Interesting. Maybe he had dropped her off somewhere, or maybe she hadn't wanted to face the consequences of their actions. Marcus turned off the engine and sat inside the car for a moment. I could see his profile from the window. He had his head in his hands. Then he picked up something from the passenger seat, the manila envelope, the documents. Finally, he got out of the car and walked toward the door. Each step seemed heavy, weighted down by the gravity of what he had done. He rang the doorbell. He didn't use his keys, perhaps out of respect, or perhaps out of fear. I waited a few seconds before opening. I wanted him to feel the uncertainty. When I finally opened the door, our eyes met. His were red. He had been crying. Good, I thought. Now he knows how it feels. "Mom," he began, his voice trembling. I raised a hand to stop him. "Come inside," I said coldly. "Not out here." He nodded and walked past me, carrying the envelope in one hand and my keys in the other. We walked in silence to the living room. I pointed to the sofa. "Sit down." He obeyed like a scolded child. I sat in the armchair across from him, in the same room where I had been crying hours earlier. But now I was different. Now I was in control. Marcus placed the envelope and the keys on the coffee table between us. "I read everything," he finally said. "Mom, I didn't know you had all that prepared." I crossed my arms. "And what does that change, Marcus? The fact that you didn't know there were consequences makes what you did okay?" He shook his head quickly. No, of course not. What I did was wrong. Very wrong. I know it." "Then tell me," I said, leaning forward. "Tell me exactly what was wrong with it. I want to hear you say it." He swallowed hard. "I took your car without permission. That was theft. And I said horrible things to you, unforgivable things, about the assisted living facility. I don't know what I was thinking." "You weren't thinking," I interrupted. "Or rather, you were thinking. You were thinking your mother was a foolish old woman you could manipulate, that you could treat like garbage." Marcus started crying openly now. "No, Mom, no! I love you! You're my mother! It's just that Tiffany said that—" He stopped abruptly, realizing what he had just admitted. "Ah," I said, leaning back in my chair. So, it was Tiffany's idea. Of course. It's always Tiffany's idea, isn't it, Marcus? And what are you? A 42-year-old man who can't make his own decisions, who lets his wife control him like a puppet? Marcus lifted his head sharply. It's not like that, Mom. I make my own decisions. Then why did you do this? I asked him. Why did you come to my house, take my keys, and tell me I didn't need my own car, that I should go to an assisted living facility? Were those your words, Marcus? They came out of your mouth, not Tiffany's, yours. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. You're right. You're completely right. I have no excuse. I can only tell you that I am sorry, that I made a terrible mistake and that it will never, ever happen again. A mistake, I repeated, not looking at him. You call this a mistake? Mistakes are accidental, Marcus. Tripping is a mistake. Forgetting a date is a mistake. But what you did was deliberate. It was planned. You came here with the intention of taking something that was mine. I turned to face him. And not just the car. You wanted to take my dignity, my independence, my right to live my own life. You wanted to lock me up in a facility as if I were an old piece of furniture you wanted to get rid of. Mom, please, he begged. Let me make it up to you. Let me fix this. I'll do anything. Anything at all. Anything? I repeated. All right. Then answer me this. Where is Tiffany right now? Marcus looked down. I left her at her parents' house. When she read the documents with me, when she saw that you could send me to jail, that you had changed your will, she got really angry. She said I was an idiot, that I had ruined everything. Ah, I said, nodding. So, she's not upset because she hurt me. She's upset because she lost the chance to inherit my money. Marcus didn't answer, but his silence said it all. I walked back to my chair and sat down. I need you to understand something, Marcus. I raised you mostly alone. Your father worked 16-hour shifts to give us a decent life. So I was the one who fed you, who changed your diapers, who woke up in the middle of the night when you had nightmares. I was the one who went to all your school performances, who helped you with your homework, who defended you when other kids bullied you. My voice cracked slightly, but I continued. I worked 2 jobs for years, so you could go to a good school, so you could have new clothes every season, so you wouldn't go without anything. And when you wanted to study music, even though your father and I thought you should study something more practical, I supported you. I sold jewelry my own mother left me to pay for your classes, because that's what mothers do. They sacrifice everything for their children. Marcus was sobbing now. I know, Mom, I know. And I've never thanked you enough. I've been a terrible son. And when your father died, I continued, when I was devastated, barely functioning, trying to figure out how to keep living without the love of my life, where were you? You came to the funeral, you stayed 2 days, and then you went back to your life. You left me alone in this empty house with my memories and my pain. That's not fair, he protested weakly. I had to work. I had responsibilities. We all have responsibilities, Marcus. But when the people you love need you, you find a way. And I wasn't expecting you to abandon your life for me. I just expected a little compassion, a little consideration, a phone call once in a while asking how I was. But no, I barely heard from you for 3 months, until yesterday, when I called to tell you about my new car. And instead of being happy for me, you came here to steal it. He covered his face with his hands. I'm a monster, a complete monster. You're not a monster, I told him. You are a man who made bad decisions, a man who let himself be influenced by the wrong person, a man who forgot where he came from. But you can change, if you truly want to. Marcus looked up. Yes, I want to. I swear I want to change. Tell me what I have to do. First, I said, you need to decide what's more important to you, your wife or your mother, because let me make something very clear. As long as you are with Tiffany, as long as she has that influence over you, I cannot trust you. I cannot have you in my life knowing that every word you say to me, every action you take, is filtered through her. You can't ask me to do that, Marcus said. She's my wife. I love her. You love her? I repeated. But you love me, and yet you did this to me. Then maybe your concept of love is distorted, Marcus. Maybe you need to rethink what it truly means to love someone. Because love isn't taking. Love is giving, it's respecting, it's protecting. And you didn't do any of that today. I stood up and picked up the envelope from the table. These documents are still valid. The will is still in effect. The report for grand theft auto can be filed at any time within the next year. For now, I won't do anything. But consider it a sword hanging over your head, a reminder that your actions have consequences. Marcus stood up too. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for not calling the police. Thank you for giving me another chance. Don't thank me yet, I told him, because this is your only chance. If you ever disrespect me again, if you ever treat me like less than a person, if you try to manipulate or control me in any way, I will use these documents, and I won't just remove you from my will. I will hold you legally accountable for what you did today. He nodded repeatedly. I understand. I promise. It won't happen again. There's one more thing, I added. I want you to go to therapy, by yourself, not couples therapy, individual therapy. You need to understand why you allowed this to happen, why you let Tiffany convince you to treat your own mother this way. You need to work on yourself before you can be a good son again. I'll do it, he said. I'll look for a therapist tomorrow. Good, I replied. And until you've been to at least 6 sessions, until I can see a real change in you, our relationship will be limited. Occasional phone calls, nothing more. You are not welcome in this house, not until I can trust that you won't look at every object I own and think about its value. Marcus moved as if to hug me. I took a step back. Not yet. I need time. I need to heal from what you did to me. And you need to prove to me with actions, not words, that you have changed. He dropped his arms to his sides. I understand. I'll wait as long as you need. I picked up my keys from the table. These are mine. This car is mine. This house is mine. My life is mine. And nobody, hear me well, nobody is going to take any of that from me ever again. Marcus nodded. You're right. And I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to defend yourself from your own son. That should never have happened. I walked to the door and opened it. I think it's time for you to go. Marcus walked past me. He paused at the threshold. Mom, I really do love you. You know that, right? I looked him in the eyes. I want to believe you do. But love without respect isn't love, Marcus. It's just a pretty word people use to excuse bad behavior. Show me respect. Show me you value who I am. And maybe, with time, we can rebuild what was broken today. He walked out of the house. I watched him walk toward the street, where he had left a taxi waiting, something he must have called while driving back. Tiffany had obviously kept their car. Marcus got into the cab, and before it pulled away, he looked at me one last time through the window. There was so much pain on his face, so much remorse. Part of me wanted to run to him, hug him, tell him everything was okay, because that's what mothers do, right? They forgive. They always forgive. But I had forgiven too many things in my life. I had forgiven small slights, Tiffany's rude comments, Marcus's lack of attention after his father's death, and all that forgiveness had only made them think they could keep treating me poorly, that I would always be there, absorbing everything without complaint. But not anymore. This version of Ellie was different. This version knew how to set boundaries. I closed the door and leaned against it for a moment. My whole body was shaking, not from fear, not from sadness, but from pure adrenaline. I had just confronted my son. I had just set boundaries I never thought I would have to set. And even though it hurt, even though every maternal fiber in my body screamed at me to be softer, I knew I had done the right thing. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were still trembling slightly. I checked the clock. It was barely 6 o'clock in the evening. I felt like days had passed since Marcus had arrived that morning and taken my keys. But only a few hours had gone by, hours that had changed everything. I picked up my phone and called Walter. I needed to tell him how the confrontation had gone. He answered immediately. Ellie, tell me you're okay. I'm fine, I replied. Better than I expected, actually. Marcus returned the car. We talked. I set clear boundaries, and he accepted everything. Walter sighed with relief. I'm glad to hear that. You did exactly what you needed to do. It must have been difficult. It was, I admitted. But it was also necessary. And you know what's strange? I feel stronger now, like I've finally recovered something I lost a long time ago. That's called dignity, Walter said softly. And you deserve to feel that way. We chatted for a few more minutes. He reassured me that the documents were still valid, that I had all the legal power on my side, and that if I ever needed anything at all, I just had to call him. Thank you, Walter, not just for the legal help, but for believing in me. Always, Ellie, always. After hanging up, I stood in the middle of the kitchen, unsure what to do. The house was silent, too silent. All day long, I had been so focused on the confrontation, on mentally preparing myself to face Marcus, that I hadn't thought about what would come next. And now, in that silence, reality began to set in. My son had betrayed me. That wasn't going to change. We might rebuild our relationship eventually if he truly put in the effort, but it would never be the same. That innocence, that blind trust a mother has in her child, was broken. And even though I had won the battle, even though I had successfully defended my dignity, I couldn't deny that I had also lost something. I had lost the image I had of my family, the illusion that no matter what, my son would always look out for me. I sat down at the kitchen table, and for the first time in hours, I allowed the tears to flow freely. But these tears were different. They weren't tears of humiliation or despair like the ones that morning. They were tears of grief. I was mourning the relationship I thought I had with my son, the family I thought we were, the mother I used to be, the one who always forgave everything because she believed that was love. I cried for a long time, and when I finally wiped the tears away, I felt strangely at peace, because I was also letting go of something. I was letting go of the unrealistic expectations, the need to be perfect, the belief that if I was just good enough, loving enough, sacrificing enough, my son would value me. Now I understood that wasn't my responsibility. I had done my job as a mother. I had raised him well. I had given him love, education, and values. If he chose to ignore all that, if he chose to let Tiffany turn him into someone I didn't recognize, that was his decision, not my failure. I stood up and washed my face. Then I went to my bedroom and took out a box from my closet that I had been avoiding since my husband died. It was a box full of letters he had written me over the years for birthdays, anniversaries, or just because. My husband wasn't very expressive verbally, but he wrote beautifully, and in those letters, he always reminded me how strong, capable, and valuable I was. I pulled one out at random and read it. It said, "My dearest Ellie, sometimes I see you doubting yourself, and it breaks my heart because I see what you don't see. I see a woman who can handle anything, who faces every problem with grace and determination, who never gives up. You are stronger than you think, and the day you finally believe it too, the whole world is going to shake. I love you today and always." I held the letter against my chest. "I wish you were here," I whispered. "I wish you could see me now. I think I finally understand what you meant. I think I'm finally that strong woman you always saw in me." I carefully put the letter back in the box. Someday I would read them all, but for now, that one was enough. It was the reminder I needed that I was capable, that I always had been. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. I didn't have nightmares. I didn't wake up crying like so many other nights since my husband had passed away. I slept deeply, completely, and when I woke up the next morning, I felt refreshed, renewed. The first rays of the sun were coming through my window, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. I got up, showered, dressed in comfortable clothes, and walked out of the house. My silver car was still in the driveway, waiting for me. I looked at it fondly. It had gone through so much in such a short time. It had been bought with hope, stolen with cruelty, and recovered with justice. But there it was, shining under the morning sun, ready to take me wherever I wanted to go. I got in, adjusted the rearview mirror, and started the engine. The gentle purr made me smile. I opened the glove box for a moment. The manila envelope was no longer there. I had stored it in a safe place inside my house. But the glove box now held something different. A small photo of my husband and me taken on our last anniversary, both of us smiling, embracing, happy. I put it there as a reminder that I had had true love, that I had been valued, and that I deserved to continue being valued. I backed out of the driveway and drove off without a specific destination. I just wanted to drive, to feel the freedom of going wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I drove through the streets of my neighborhood, then took the highway that led out of the city. The landscape began to change. Houses gave way to trees, and trees to open fields, and I kept driving with the windows slightly open, feeling the wind on my face. After an hour, I reached the cemetery where my husband was buried. I hadn't planned to come here, but somehow my hands had turned the wheel in this direction without me realizing it, as if a part of me knew I needed to be here, that I needed to tell him everything that had happened. I parked the car and walked to his grave. The headstone was simple but elegant. It had his name, his dates, and a phrase I had chosen. He loved with all his heart and lived with all his soul. I knelt in front of it and ran my hand over the engraved letters. "Hello, my love," I whispered. "I'm sorry I haven't been here sooner. It's been a tough few days." And then, kneeling there in front of my husband's grave, I told him everything. I told him about the car, about Marcus, about Tiffany, about the betrayal, about the documents Walter helped me prepare, about the confrontation, about setting boundaries. I talked and talked. And even though I know it sounds ridiculous to talk to a tombstone, I swear I could feel his presence. I could feel his approval. "I did what you taught me," I told him. "I finally didn't let myself be walked all over. I defended my dignity. And it hurts. It hurts so much because he's my son. But I also feel good. I feel strong. I feel like the woman you always said I was." Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time they were quiet tears, tears of acceptance. I sat there next to the grave for almost an hour, just being present, just feeling the connection with the man who had been my partner for 40 years. And when I finally got up to leave, I felt something different. I felt as if he had given me his blessing, as if he had told me it was okay to move on, that it was okay to be strong, that it was okay to put my needs first for once in my life. I drove back home feeling lighter, but when I arrived, there was a car parked in front of my driveway. I didn't recognize it at first. It was an older red sedan, but well kept, and then I saw who was sitting on my porch steps: Tiffany. My daughter-in-law was there waiting for me, and by the expression on her face, she hadn't come to apologize. I parked my car in the driveway and stayed inside for a moment, mentally preparing myself. I hadn't expected this. I had thought that after what happened with Marcus, Tiffany would keep her distance, but clearly, I had underestimated her audacity. I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse, and got out of the car. Tiffany got up from the steps as I approached. She wore jeans and a coral-colored blouse. Her hair was perfectly styled as always, her makeup flawless. But there was something in her eyes, something cold and calculating that made me stop a few feet away. "Tiffany," I said in a neutral voice, "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "We need to talk," she replied. Her voice was strained, controlled. "About what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She crossed her arms. "About what you did to Marcus. About how you almost put him in jail over a simple misunderstanding. About how you changed your will to punish us for a mistake." "A misunderstanding?" I repeated slowly. "Is that what you call theft? A misunderstanding?" Tiffany snorted. "Please, Ellie, he's your son. Family. It wasn't theft. He just borrowed the car, and you turned it into a huge drama. You called an attorney, prepared legal documents, threatened to call the police, all that over a car." "It wasn't just over a car," I said, feeling the anger begin to simmer inside me. "It was about respect. It was about dignity. It was because my own son walked into my house, took my keys without permission, and told me I didn't need anything anymore, that I should go to an assisted living facility. Those were his words, not mine." Tiffany waved her hand as if swatting a fly. "He was frustrated. He said things he didn't mean. We all do that when we're stressed." "Ah," I said, taking a step toward her. "So, when you're stressed, do you also tell your mother to go rot in a nursing home? Because if so, maybe you should work on your stress management." "Don't you dare judge me," Tiffany said, pointing a finger at me. "You don't know anything about my life, about our problems. Marcus and I are going through financial difficulties. We needed that car for the trip. My parents were going to help us with money, but we had to get there, and you, selfishly, denied us." I laughed. It was a bitter, humorless laugh. "Selfishly? I was selfish for not letting you steal my car? The car I bought with my own money, the car that represents my independence? Tell me, Tiffany, in what universe is it selfish to protect what is yours?" She pursed her lips. "You're his mother. You're supposed to help him when he's in trouble, not punish him, not threaten him with jail." "I helped him for 42 years, I said, raising my voice. "I fed him, clothed him, paid for his education, and sacrificed my own needs so he would have everything. But apparently, that's not enough for you. Do you want me to keep sacrificing until there's nothing left of me? Until I'm just an empty old woman without dignity or rights?" "You're being dramatic," Tiffany said, rolling her eyes. "No one is asking you not to have dignity, just to be reasonable, to understand that family helps each other out, to share your resources with your only son." "Family helps each other out?" I repeated. "Then where was Marcus when my husband died? Where were you two when I was devastated, completely broken, not knowing how to keep living? You came to the funeral, stayed for 2 days, and then disappeared for 3 months." "We had our own lives," Tiffany protested. "Jobs, responsibilities." "Exactly," I said. "You had your own lives, and I respect that. I never asked you to drop everything for me. But now that I'm trying to rebuild my own life, to find some happiness, after losing the love of my existence, you show up demanding that I give you everything. My car, my house, eventually my money when I die. It's all about what I can give you." Tiffany took a step closer. Her face was red. "You know what your problem is, Ellie? You're bitter. You're lonely and resentful because your husband died, and now you want everyone to suffer with you. That's why you're pushing Marcus away. That's why you changed your will, because if you can't be happy, no one else can be either." Her words hit me like slaps, but instead of hurting me, something different happened. Something clicked in my mind. Tiffany wasn't here for Marcus. She wasn't here because she cared about her husband or our mother-son relationship. She was here for the money, for the inheritance she had just lost. And finally, after 5 years of discomfort around this woman, after 5 years of trying to get along with her for my son's sake, I saw exactly who she was. "Get off my property," I said in a calm but firm voice. Tiffany blinked. "What?" I said, "Get off my property, now." She laughed in disbelief. "I'm not leaving until we talk about this like adults." "We already talked," I replied, "and I've heard enough. Now leave before I call the police for trespassing." "You wouldn't dare," Tiffany said, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. "After what happened with Marcus, after seeing that I actually prepared legal documents, after understanding that I'm not playing around, you still underestimate me. Try staying, and you'll see." I took my phone out of my purse. Tiffany looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me. "You're crazy," she muttered. "Completely crazy." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I'm finally sane after years of letting people like you walk all over me. Now leave." Tiffany looked at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over," she threatened. "Marcus is my husband, and I'm going to make sure he understands he has to choose. Either his crazy mother or his real family? Go ahead, I said. Make him choose. Because something tells me that when Marcus truly thinks about who has been there for him his entire life and who only showed up when there was something to gain, the decision is going to be easier than you think. Tiffany spun on her heel and walked toward her car. She got in, started the engine with more force than necessary, and sped out of my driveway, tires screeching. I stood there, watching her drive away. My heart was pounding fast. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from pure adrenaline. I had just faced Tiffany. I had just told her exactly what I thought, unfiltered, without being the agreeable mother-in-law, without trying to keep the peace at any cost, and it felt incredible. I walked into my house and locked the door. Then I collapsed onto the sofa and let out a laugh of relief, of liberation. For 5 years, I had walked on eggshells around Tiffany. I had ignored her rude comments. I had pretended not to notice how she assessed my house as if it were already hers. I had smiled when she criticized my cooking, my clothes, my decisions, all because I didn't want to cause trouble, because I wanted Marcus to be happy. But now I realized something fundamental. By trying to keep the peace, by allowing Tiffany to disrespect me over and over without consequence, I hadn't helped anyone. I hadn't made Marcus happy. I had only taught him that it was okay for his wife to treat his mother badly, that it was acceptable, that I would tolerate everything. And by doing that, I had contributed to the problem. I had allowed this toxic dynamic to grow to the point where my own son felt he could rob me and threaten to put me in a home. That night, sitting in my living room, I made an important decision. No more. No more being agreeable. No more putting the needs of others before my own to the point of losing myself. No more sacrificing my dignity for the illusion of family harmony. If Marcus really wanted to rebuild our relationship, it was going to have to be on my terms, with mutual respect, with clear boundaries. And if that meant our relationship would never be the same as before, then so be it, because the relationship we had before was broken anyway. The next few days were strange, quiet. I didn't hear from Marcus. No texts, no calls. Part of me wondered if Tiffany had made good on her threat, if she had forced Marcus to choose and he had chosen her over me. The idea hurt, but I also knew that if that was the case, if my son really chose a woman who hated me over his own mother, then there was nothing more I could do. I had done my part. I had set my boundaries. I had defended my dignity. The rest was up to him. I decided to focus on myself, on my own healing, on my own growth. I called my friend Serena Jenkins, whom I hadn't seen in weeks. I told her everything that had happened, and instead of judging me, instead of telling me I should forgive my son unconditionally, because that's how families work, she supported me completely. "Ellie," she said over the phone, her voice full of pride, "you did the right thing. What Marcus did was unforgivable, and I'm glad you finally stood up for yourself." Her words filled me with relief. For days, I had had this voice in my head telling me that maybe I had been too harsh, that perhaps I should have been more understanding. But Serena reminded me that being understanding doesn't mean being a doormat. We made plans to meet for lunch the next day. It had been so long since I had gone out, since I had socialized, that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to have a life outside of my family problems. The next day, I drove my silver car to the restaurant where we had agreed to meet. Serena was already there, sitting at a table by the window. When she saw me walk in, she got up and gave me a big hug. "Look at you," she said, stepping back to evaluate me. "You look different, stronger." "I am," I replied, "or at least I'm trying to be." We sat down and ordered, and for the next 2 hours, we talked. We really talked, not just about Marcus and the family drama, but about everything, our lives, our dreams, what we wanted to do with the time we had left. Serena was a widow too. Her husband had died 5 years ago, and she told me how the first few years were terrible, how lost she felt, how she didn't know who she was without her husband. But eventually, she told me, I found a new version of myself, a version that enjoys things I never tried before, who travels alone, who takes painting classes, who doesn't need anyone's approval to be happy. Her words resonated deeply with me because that was exactly what I was trying to do. Find a new version of myself, a version that existed independently of being a wife or mother, a version that had its own interests, its own dreams, its own identity. "Serena," I said, "I need to ask you something." "Go ahead," she replied. "How do you get past the guilt? The feeling that you're betraying your husband's memory by moving on, by being happy without him?" Serena took my hand across the table. "Ellie, our husbands loved us, and because they loved us, the last thing they would have wanted is to see us frozen in time, living like ghosts in our own lives. My husband told me before he died, he literally made me promise that I was going to keep living, that I was going to find joy again, that I wasn't going to waste the years I had left mourning the ones we lost together. And your husband, I'm sure, would have told you the same." She was right. My husband had told me in those letters I kept in the box, in conversations we had about death, about what we wanted for each other if one of us went first. He had made me promise not to give up, to keep moving forward, and I was fulfilling that promise. "Thank you, Serena. I needed to hear that." "You're welcome," she replied, smiling. "And now, let's talk about more exciting things. What are you going to do with all this new freedom you have?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't really thought about it. I had been so focused on surviving the drama with Marcus that I hadn't considered what would come next. What did I want to do now that I had a car, now that I had mobility, now that I had my life back? "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never been good at planning things just for myself." Serena smiled. "Then let's start now. What is something you always wanted to do but never did because you were too busy taking care of others?" I thought for a moment. "I always wanted to see the ocean at sunrise. My husband and I talked about taking a trip to the coast someday, but there was always something, work, responsibilities, Marcus. And then he got sick, and we ran out of time." Serena slapped the table with her palm. "Perfect. Then that's what you're going to do. You're going to drive to the coast, you're going to watch the sunrise over the ocean, and you're going to do it for yourself. Not as a tribute to your husband, not because you feel obligated to, but because you want to, because you deserve to experience something beautiful." The idea both scared and excited me. It was a 5-hour drive to the nearest shoreline. I would have to drive alone, possibly stay in a hotel, and do everything myself without anyone to lean on. But I also realized something else. That was exactly what I needed. I needed to prove to myself that I could, that I was capable, that I didn't need Marcus to survive, that I didn't need anyone. "I'm going to do it," I said, feeling more sure with every word. "I'm going to the coast this weekend." Serena clapped her hands. "That's my girl, and I want pictures. I want proof that Ellie is finally living for herself." We left the restaurant feeling lighter than I had in months. Serena hugged me before we parted ways. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "for standing up for yourself, for setting boundaries, for choosing yourself." Her words stayed with me all the way home. When I arrived, I saw I had a message on my phone. It was from Marcus, the first message I had received from him since our confrontation days ago. "Mom," the message said, "I know you said you needed space and I'm respecting that, but I need you to know I found a therapist. I already had my first session. It was hard but necessary. I'm working on myself. I'm trying to understand how I let things get so far. I don't expect your immediate forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm trying. I love you." I read the message several times. Part of me wanted to reply immediately, to tell him I was proud of him, that I was glad he was seeking help. But another part, the wise part that had learned to be cautious, told me to wait. Words were easy. Sustained actions over time were what mattered. So I simply put the phone away without replying, not because I wanted to punish him, but because I needed more than a message. I needed to see real change. That night, I began planning my trip to the coast. I looked up hotels online. I found a small, cozy one with an ocean view. The photos showed a simple but clean place, perfect for what I needed. A single room cost $150, $150 a night. I could afford it. I had the savings, and for the first time in my life, I was going to spend money on myself without feeling guilty. I booked the room for Friday night. That would give me time to arrive before sunset, rest, and then wake up early to see the sunrise. When I confirmed the reservation, I felt an excitement I hadn't felt in years. Anticipation, expectation, pure joy at the idea of doing something just for me, something no one could take away, something that was completely mine. I spent the days before the trip preparing. I checked my car, making sure everything was in order. I filled the gas tank. I packed a small suitcase with comfortable clothes, a jacket, because the mornings on the coast could be chilly, and my old camera. I wanted to capture that moment. I wanted proof that Ellie, at 65, had found the courage to live again. Friday morning, I woke up early, nervous but excited. I loaded my suitcase into the car. I checked that I had my charged phone, my license, my credit card, everything I needed. I stood in front of my house for a moment, looking at it. This house that had been my home for so many years, this house full of good and bad memories, and I realized I no longer felt trapped. It was no longer a mausoleum. It was simply a house, a place where I lived, but it wasn't what defined me. I got into my silver car, adjusted the seat, started the engine, and pulled out of my driveway. The sun was just beginning to rise on the horizon. I had a long road ahead of me, a 5-hour drive, but for the first time in a long time, that didn't scare me. It thrilled me. I drove through the streets of my city, then took the highway that would lead me to the coast. Traffic was light at that hour. The road stretched out before me like a promise. I put on music on the radio, old songs my husband and I used to listen to, and instead of crying, I smiled. I wasn't running from the memories. I was taking them with me. I was honoring them by living. During the drive, I stopped at a gas station. As I filled the tank, an older woman approached. She was traveling alone, too. We smiled at each other with that complicity only women of a certain age understand. She asked me where I was going. "To the coast," I replied, "to see the sunrise." "How beautiful," she said. "I'm traveling alone, too. It's liberating, isn't it?" "It is," I admitted. "More than I expected." We exchanged a few more words before going our separate ways, but that brief encounter left me thinking. How many women like me were out there? Widows, mothers, grandmothers, women who had spent decades taking care of others and who were finally learning to take care of themselves. Women who were reclaiming their independence, their dignity, their right to exist beyond the roles society had assigned them. I wasn't alone in this, and that realization filled me with strength. I arrived at the hotel around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The place was exactly as it looked in the photos. Small, quaint, located right in front of the beach. The receptionist, a young man named Andre Scott, greeted me with a warm smile. "Welcome, Ms. Vance. Your room is ready. It has a beautiful ocean view." I took the keys and went up to my room. When I opened the door, the smell of the sea hit me immediately. The windows were open, and the sea breeze drifted in freely. I left my suitcase on the floor and walked onto the balcony. The view was breathtaking. The ocean stretched out endlessly before me. Waves gently crashed on the shore. Birds circled over the water, and the sun, beginning its descent toward the horizon, painted everything in shades of orange and pink. I stood there, hands on the railing, just breathing, just being, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. True, deep peace. That night, I ate dinner alone at a small restaurant near the hotel. I ordered fresh fish and a glass of white wine. The waiter, noticing I was alone, asked if I was waiting for someone. "No," I replied. "I'm alone, and it's perfect this way." He nodded approvingly. "Sometimes the best company is yourself." He was right. Throughout the entire dinner, I didn't feel lonely. I felt complete. I enjoyed every bite, every sip, without having to worry about anyone else, without having to make sure others were comfortable first. After dinner, I walked along the beach. The moon was almost full and illuminated the water with a silver glow. My bare feet sank into the cool sand. The sound of the waves was hypnotic. I walked for almost an hour, just thinking about everything that had happened. My husband, Marcus, Tiffany, the woman I had been, and the woman I was becoming. And I realized something important. I wasn't angry. I no longer held resentment. I had set my boundaries. I had defended my dignity, and now I could let go. I could release the rage, because holding on to it only hurt me. I returned to the hotel around 10 o'clock that night. I set my alarm for 5 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to be on the beach before the sun rose. I lay down in the hotel bed, listening to the distant sound of the waves, and I slept deeply. No nightmares. I didn't wake up crying. I just slept. And when the alarm went off at 5, I got up feeling rested, renewed. I quickly dressed in warm clothes, grabbed my camera, and left the hotel. The beach was deserted at that hour. The sky was still dark, but I could see the first touch of light on the horizon. I found a spot in the sand, sat down, and waited. Slowly, gradually, the sky began to change. First from black to deep navy blue, then to purple, then to pink. And finally, the sun began to emerge from the ocean, a ball of orange fire that transformed everything in its path. It was the most beautiful spectacle I had ever seen. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but they were tears of joy, of gratitude, of being alive, of having made it here despite everything. I took pictures, but I knew no capture could do justice to what I was witnessing. This was something that had to be felt, that had to be lived. I stayed there until the sun was fully up, until the day had officially begun. Then I took my phone and snapped a picture of the ocean. I sent it to Serena with a message. I did it. I'm here, and it's perfect. Her reply came minutes later. I knew you would. I'm so proud of you, friend. Then, after thinking about it for a moment, I opened my conversation with Marcus. He had sent another message the day before. Mom, I had my 3rd therapy session today. We're working on how I set the wrong priorities, how I let money and Tiffany's opinions become more important than your well-being. I'm still working. I'm still trying. I looked at that message for a long time. Then I wrote my reply. Marcus, I'm at the coast. I came to see the sunrise, something your father and I always wanted to do together. I did it alone, and as I sat on the sand watching the sunrise, I realized something. I forgive you, not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to the anger only hurts me. But you need to understand something. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. Our relationship has changed, and if we want to rebuild it, it will take time, a lot of time, and it will require you to show me with actions, not just words, that you have truly changed. In the meantime, I'm going to keep living my life. I'm going to keep being happy because I deserve that. I love you, but now I also love myself, and that is something I will never negotiate again. I hit send and felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I didn't know what would happen with Marcus and me. I didn't know if we would ever have a close relationship again, but I knew I had done the right thing. I had established my terms. I had put my needs on the same level as everyone else's, and that was something revolutionary for me. I stayed on the beach until 8 o'clock in the morning. Then I returned to the hotel, had breakfast, packed my things, and began the journey back home. But I was not the same woman who had made that trip the day before. I was someone different, someone stronger, someone who had learned that it's okay to defend yourself, that it's okay to set boundaries, that it's okay to choose yourself. When I arrived home that afternoon, my phone had a message from Marcus. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for giving me another chance. I'm going to show you I can change. And about Tiffany, we need to talk. There are things I need to figure out. I read the message and smiled. I didn't know exactly what it meant, but it sounded promising. It sounded like Marcus was finally waking up, finally seeing things clearly. But even if he didn't, even if he chose to stay with Tiffany and continue down that path, I would be fine, because I had discovered something fundamental. I didn't need my son's approval to be happy. I didn't need anyone to validate me. I was enough. I had always been enough. That night, sitting in my living room with a cup of tea, I looked around my house, the furniture my husband and I had chosen together, the photos on the walls, the memories of a life well lived. And instead of feeling sadness for what I had lost, I felt gratitude for what I had had and excitement for what was still to come. This wasn't my story ending. This was my story beginning a new chapter, a chapter where I was the protagonist, where I made the decisions, where I lived life on my own terms. Sometimes justice doesn't come as a great act of revenge. Sometimes it comes quietly. It comes in the form of established boundaries, recovered dignity, and learning to value yourself enough not to let anyone treat you as less than you are. My son took my car, thinking I wouldn't do anything, thinking I was weak, thinking he could walk all over me. And what he found in that glove box wasn't just legal documents. It was the truth. The truth that his mother was stronger than he imagined, that there were consequences, that respect is not optional, it is necessary. And now, as I drive my silver car through the streets of my city, with the wind in my hair and the sun on my face, I know I made the right decisions. I defended my dignity, I set boundaries, and I reclaimed my life. This is Ellie, and finally, after 65 years, I learned to live for myself. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.